episode of 177 Nations of Tasmania. Imagine being a child in a city beset by a seemingly never-ending civil war. At any moment, gunfire or shelling could break out, and the whole family would have to shelter in the basement. You cannot go to the other side of town because it's not safe. To go to school, you may have to go through the holes in walls left by the fighting. This lasts for years and years till it just becomes normalised. This was the kind of childhood Ali experienced in the 1980s in Beirut, Lebanon, a country that was racked by a bloody civil war for almost 15 years. But Lebanon was not always like this. A generation before, it was a pearl of the Middle East, enjoying freedom and a way of life that were the envy of its neighbours. And in many ways, the story of Ali's family offers a window into the modern history of the country. But it was not the war that made Ali leave Lebanon. After the death of his father and unable to complete his university study, Ali decided to leave Lebanon. An opportunity through a relative arose to go to London, and while he was there he met his wife-to-be, who happened to come from Tasmania, where he would eventually move and start a new life. But this is the shortened version. The longer version of this story, well, I'll let Ali tell that for himself.
My name is Ali. I was born in Beirut, and that was 1977, although on the ID it's written 1978, and that's due to the civil war that was going on in Lebanon, and things were delayed. So officially it should have been 1977, but it wasn't. So I'm 1 year younger on the ID, which is nice.
Probably one of the few positive things of the time.
Yes, I know, yeah. So, it was back in these days, like for mum and dad, it was more important for us to stay safe rather than, being registered that this person was born. I went to school in Beirut and then I went to university in Beirut. So, the war stopped in 1990 and I was year 9, and then 1993 I was graduated from school and then studied physics for 1 year, and then I thought, no, this is not me, I better do something different. And then I went and studied accounting for a couple of years, and things didn't really suit me, so I thought, I better study law. So I wasted 4 years and I didn't finish any degree.
So you were kind of just trying to find what your path was.
That was one thing. Plus, during my university study, my father had a car crash, and he went into a coma state for 3 years. And these things kind of affected. I wasn't a good student. Otherwise, I would have focused more and finished my degree. And that was distracting for me. Emotionally, it was very, very distracting, especially when you're the eldest in Lebanon, you're supposed to be the one who will be responsible of the family. And we are 6 brothers and 1 sister, so it's it's reasonably big family for Lebanon. We had my grandmother, who was my father's mum, that was living with us. She was an elderly woman, and my mum. So we had to keep things together, and that was very challenging back in these days. Probably when I was 6 or 7 years old, I still remember how, during the Civil War or during the war when it was going on, because the war didn't really go on forever. It will go on for a couple of days and then they will stop and then they will start. You never know why they stopped and you never know why they started again. So you just remember suddenly when you hear the bombs all around the area, you just pretty much go to the basement. And there were basements pretty much everywhere in Beirut. So every building had a basement or had a room where it's called kind of the safe room. So you go and hide in there. So that's something about my childhood that I clearly remember. And that's something that you'll think, oh, this is the norm, and you don't realize until the war has ended and then life starts again, and then it's oh no, there's some other things that you can see. There was always black and white back in these days. So as a little kid, we, me and my brothers and my sister, we lived at our grandparents' house. It was a big house in the middle of Beirut. And my father was the youngest, and usually the youngest, he's the one who look after the parents when they get old. And so he got married and he stayed with his mom and dad. So he was living, my mother was living with them as well. So we were all living at their house back in these days. And it was a nice big house for Beirut, because usually if you're living in Beirut, you're living in units, you don't live in houses. But we were lucky enough to, to have our own house and a little backyard where you go and play and, just have lots of fun. And
So you had quite a big household.
Yes. So there was probably, it was 2 stories house. It was a reasonably big house. Plus my grandfather, he had few little like 1-bedroom units around the house, which is kind of connected. Like they look like wings, or they call it here like servant wings. There was about 3 or 4 of them, and people were renting. He had a shop where we used to sell all the kitchen utensils, everything that you will pretty much need in the house, like starting from a cup, ending in a big, let's say, plastic container that you can fill it up with water. And these containers were very important back in these days, because water wasn't really always available. So we used to go and fill up water from this. There was like a tap for the whole neighborhood. You go and line up and fill up the water, and then, and so these containers were very important. These people that were renting, they used to have trolleys. And reasonably, when I say trolleys, like reasonably big trolleys, you're talking about 1.5 meter width by 2 meters length. And they will go and put glasses, forks, knives, anything that you will use in a kitchen, and then they will push it around the neighborhoods. The roads were very small in Beirut back in these days, and even if they weren't small, they were made small because everywhere there were lots of sand hills and lots of places where it's too narrow for cars to drive through, and mainly because there were snipers on both ends, and to be able to keep safe, that was one of the things. So people will walk around with trolleys, not people, mainly the people that were selling these things. My grandfather will give them the products that they need to sell. They will push them around, sell whatever they want, like whatever they and then they will pay the price.
So they were kind of like mobile street sellers.
Exactly. Actually, one of my childhood memories is there was a person, talking about these people that carry things on their backs and trolleys. There was a person who used to make sweets. It's something very close to kunafa, but it's something different. It's a filo pastry filled out with cheese, and you have sugar syrup with it. And this guy, he used to walk around the neighborhoods, and he used to call out, "Oh, they're not delicious. Don't come and buy them." And you should have seen it. Like people will be coming from everywhere just for calling out, like, "Don't come near me. I stink. These sweets are not nice. I'm a dirty man." And then, honestly, everybody will come and buy from him. It's an amazing way of persuading. Yes,
negative psychology.
I know. Yeah, and that was. I can't remember his name. He was elderly. He was an elderly man back in these days as well. Like he was, in his probably 70s. The other thing of my childhood is during the war, when we go to school, you will be sometimes, to be able to cross from one side to another, you have to walk through trenches to get to school. And there's another thing is, within the actual building, let's say, because the trench ends, let's say, at a wall of a building, you will find like a hole in the actual wall to enter the building. It wasn't the door though. There was like a hole after hole after hole through the rooms, let's say, of a building that was pretty much almost destroyed by the war from the top, but the bottom is kind of safe because there are lots of sand hills around it, surrounding it. So you'll walk through these buildings pretty much. It's like digging a tunnel into a big mountain. You just walk through it until you get to school or to the safe area.
Because I was wondering how much schooling would have been disrupted by the war.
Big time, always. Like we'll be having an exam, let's say, and suddenly such and such in a neighborhood or a suburb, he'll be like the person in charge of that area. He was assassinated, let's say, or killed, and suddenly the war break out. Like the problem about it, you wouldn't know when does it start and when does it end. Like the war has ended in 1990s, but nobody knew why did it end. Like it didn't have a reason to end. Like nobody was winning, and the people or the politicians that they were fighting, now they are in power. So they became presidents or became prime ministers. And And for us, let's say, when they start shooting or when they start firing at each other, there was few safe spots pretty much. So that no one will be able to get you there or nobody will be seeing you. So we used to wait until they stop the fire, until they cease the fire, and then we'll go and collect all of these shells. And these shells, they're made out of copper. So you go and sell them. So you collect them, and that will be your pocket money. You go and buy an ice cream, or you go and buy... Honestly, but when I think about it, it was crazy. It was brutal. But as a child, you don't think of any of these things. It's more, you always have that hope in you as a child, like, oh, there's something better, or there's, oh, it's nice, oh, did you see them? They were shooting and I saw that, oh, they're these. And sometimes, they will use some different type of bullets that when you shoot, it lights up. I don't know what they call it in English, but it's like, and then it's like, oh, wow, look at that. That looks lovely in the sky, especially when it's dark, yeah. To believe it or not, I don't talk much about it, but, it's something that was the normality for an everyday Lebanese child that was born in the 70s. And
did people or you at the time foresee an end to that conflict?
Not as a child, no. Like my parents and of course the people who were born before the war, like they talk about Lebanon, that Lebanon is the best place. If you want to live your life, come to Beirut and see. It's Beirut is the Paris of the Middle East, or Lebanon is the Switzerland of the Middle East, especially because of the banking system, which was an absolute joke now. Like what's going on in Lebanon, the financial situation is really bad. But back in the 60s and 70s, Lebanon was the place to come and visit. Like you've got freedom, for Lebanon it was freedom of speech. So if you want to print a book, you bring it to Lebanon, and the author will be, there'll be lots of places where you can go and print it and market the book and sell it. During the war, it was a totally different thing. So for us, that was the normality, and I was like, yeah, war, so what? I'm going to the village whenever I go. I come from the village, like whenever I come, and you don't realize that until the war ends, because I was too young to be able to understand how to live without war. One of the things actually that I clearly remember about the Israelis, they were occupying my village, or a part of South Lebanon, which one of the villages was my village. Yeah.
When you say my village, what do you mean? Is it with the village where you lived?
Yeah, sorry, no. I was born and brought up in Beirut. Same thing with my father. But his father originally comes from South Lebanon. So in Lebanon, even if you are, even if you were born in this area, you will always refer that you come from the area that your grandfather has come from.
Okay.
So that's something. Yeah. So even when we vote, actually, we can't vote in Beirut. Although I was I know nothing about the village in comparison to Beirut. So I know more people in Beirut. I know more. I know the areas in Beirut. I know the name of the places, the streets, the roads, restaurants, cinemas, movies, everything. Bookshops. I know a lot about Beirut. If you ask me about the village, yeah, I know a bit. And they will say, oh, this area called such and such. Oh, your grandfather has a piece of land there, and it's for you. I don't know where is it. I've never been,
yeah.
But I hear about it. And, one day, I might go and build a shack there and just retire there. My mother, actually, she was born in the village. So when my father met my mum, they met in the village.
Okay, so it's like your family village.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's a big village. It's, I think, our population probably almost 40,000 people. I visit the village quite frequently now, and especially because the Israelis, they withdrew from South Lebanon back in 2000. My father, he didn't really work. He did work, but... So he used to go to somewhere in Europe, buy something from, let's say, Italy, or go to Romania, buy some crystals, let's say, and then sell them. Or he will find some, something which is a good deal and looks nice and etc. He will buy it and then sell it. But of course, I'm talking wholesale. When he buys something, he wouldn't waste his time to go and buy like a couple of things and then sell it and then live for a couple of days. No. So he bought a piece of land, he built a building, he sold it, and then he will sit and relax and just enjoy life. He was that type of person.
Okay.
And then until he was, I don't know, maybe until he was in his mid-30s or early 30s, he realized that, no, this is not the right thing. His mum was rich and his father was rich, and he was the youngest. And my grandfather, he married two different women, and my father was the lonely son, him and his sister, to my grandmother. Her father was the mayor of the village. He was really rich and powerful, and I've never met him, of course, because when I was little, I remember always that my grandmother is 75, and my grandfather, I'm talking when I was 4 or 5 years old. So both of them were reasonably elderly people, because because my grandfather got married early when he was younger, but he loved my grandmother and he wanted to be with her. So he was hanging there until one day she will say, yeah, okay, let's get married. And that's what happened. Yeah, so he didn't really work. And then after, like, when he turned maybe 30, 35, he thought, like, we need to do something, but I can't really keep doing what I'm doing. Things are moving differently. I've got a big family, like 7 children to look after. We didn't struggle financially, but of course, you always want to have a better lifestyle and all of that. So, and we all went to private schools, so that was expensive again. Yeah, so he took over my grandfather's shop, and he was running it for a bit, for like 15 years.
So it sounds like he was a bit of a wheeler dealer.
Yeah, to a certain extent, yeah. Like he's done a couple of developments. Like he's built a building and then he sold everything and then spent the money. And then the other thing is he's built like a little center, like about 6 or 7 shops and a couple of stories on the top of them. And he made them into offices and shops, and then he sold them. And that was in South Lebanon. I remember that happened in 1986. Because I remember during that time we moved from Beirut to southern Lebanon because there wasn't much fighting happening in South Lebanon, and he wanted to keep us safe. Yeah, so we had to flee Beirut because most of the Palestinian camps were in Beirut. There's 2 or 3 of them, and and they were fighting, and it wasn't safe to stay there. So we went to South Lebanon for like 6 months in 1986, or 7 months, and that was one of the nicest times of my childhood again, because this is where I learned swimming. We lived in a village which was, and that was the first time I see a train, because there was a train that will take fuel from South Lebanon to Beirut, or vice versa. So, and they will deliver goods and like other things. And I remember my father rented a unit, was overlooking the actual train track and the water as well. So it was, you just get off and then go and have a look. And then we used to run on the train tracks, and then after that go and swim. Yeah, I swallowed half the Mediterranean. So 7 years old. Drank too much salty water. And then I managed to, at the end, he's the one who taught me how to swim.
I guess by the time you were in high school, that was when peace started to happen.
Yes. So once I finished year 9, the war stopped. I mean, nobody knew why they stopped the war, and nobody knew why they started the war. And there was lots of innocent people that died for no reason. They just wanted to live every single day as a normal person or the normal life. But yeah.
But did you find, like, when you were at that time at school, did it change anything? Did you feel yourself that things changed?
Okay, it did feel that the Muslims has won the war in a way, because the Syrians were more on the Muslim side. But of course they were trying to keep the balance. I mean, the actual ruler of the country during the 90s until 2005, it was the Syrians. It wasn't the Lebanese. Like, they were forming a government whenever they want. They will, say, okay, we're going to have elections. All right, we'll have elections. They will choose the president. They will choose which minister they want, and etc. So it felt that the Muslims, okay, they have won the war. and mainly Sunnis and Shias, because like Sunnis, they brought Mr. Hariri from Saudi Arabia, and he became the prime minister, the one who was assassinated in 2005, I think. So for me, the war, when it ended, it did feel different, because after the war has ended or stopped, I was walking back from school. I usually used to walk with my brothers and my sister. So I'm the one who used to look after them. Like I was 7 years old, and I used to take them all to school and bring them back from school since I was a little kid. And my father and my mum always trusted me on that. The other thing is, I can't remember my mum or my father, they used to give me the money to go and pay my school fees and register all of the, I used to do all of that myself. I didn't really need any help. Sometimes I do the same thing for my brothers and my sisters. So I was walking back from school after the war has ended, and then I was walking more on the Christian side, because we lived in an area which was pretty much about 100 meters away from where the green line is, where all the fights were happening. Okay. And of course, after they cleared it all from the mines and bombs and all of these things, I was walking back, and then I saw a guy. He wanted to talk to me, and he's a Christian guy because he was wearing a cross. So I straight away knew and that was probably the first time that I see a person from East Beirut.
Right.
I've never seen, because the war was going on, and where would you see them? You're living in your own area, they're living, and if you cross borders, there are mines, there's snipers, there's everything, like you'll get killed, unless, you know somebody that will. And that was the first time, other than seeing them on TV, of course. And he said, hi, I would like to be friends with you. And he seemed a bit simple. And I said, look, well, I've got enough friends, I think, so, but thank you, but, And he said, why not? We can be really good friends, and, you can tell he was smaller than me, so you can tell he wasn't trying to kidnap me, or because you always have these thoughts back in these days, and that happened a lot, sadly, during the Civil War. Like, they will kidnap people, and it's mainly kids, and they will sell them, or they will, it's awful. And so that's something... I was like, wow, so now I've met somebody from the other side. Just after the war has ended, my father started taking us down to the downtown, and then, because we only lived about 200 or 300 meters from the downtown where all the fights was happening. So after they cleaned it all up, because, after 15 years of war, all the roads were pretty much green, and that's why probably they called it the Green Line, because there were lots of trees that they were growing on the street, because, they shoot a missile or a bomb and then make a hole, and that hole becomes a tree. And it's really crazy how... So after they cleaned it all up, my father, he started taking us and showing us what he used to do as a child, or as an adult, as a 20 years old guy. He will show us where the movies that he used to go to, the theaters. He will show us where he used to go and swim, where he used to go and have a coffee or have a drink or something like that. And then after that, my grandfather, he took me down to Beirut, down by the waterfront, and he showed me where he taught one of his nephews how to swim back in these days, back in the 30s or 40s, when he was 30. And
sounds like discovering a whole new city then.
It was something amazing, because you hear about all of these things, and you see the movies, and you see the actual plays that they had, and because it's all on TV and it's all documented, so you watch them, but you've never been down in these areas. But when you start walking, although it was all destroyed and destructed, it was awful, like when you look at it. At the same time, you can tell that city has a soul, like it has something in there deep inside. Later on, after they have, I don't know why they've done that, but after they kind of reconstructed the city, it became a city without soul, because they changed it. It's not the same. They destroyed all these beautiful theaters that they meant a lot to lots of people. It became a downtown for the rich people, and that's it. It hasn't been like before the war. This downtown, it was for rich and poor and for everyone. So you can find, let's say, somebody who sells vegetables down there, or somebody who's got a grocery shop, or like a little coffee shop where people, a cafe where people will sit down and play cards and smoke shisha and have a tea and a coffee and watch the news about what's going on in the world. It totally changed. So it kind of lost its concept. It lost, it wasn't the same, sadly. And lots of people weren't happy with it. All of these people that were born and lived in there and worked in there, they were very sad about what has city become to what it used to be.
So when you were reaching the end of school, did you have any idea of what you wanted to do, or was it just a matter of just finding the best option?
Exactly, yeah. Like one of my friends, he said, oh, when I finish school, I'm going to go to the military college or join the army and become an officer. I was like, oh, that's a good idea. But in Lebanon, to be able to do that, you have to bribe somebody, or else you have to know somebody who is powerful, who will be able to help you to get to that school or that college or whatever it is. Anyway, sadly, I finished year 12, but I didn't get enough marks to be able to join the military school or the military college to become an officer. I mean, these things could have been easily done if I found somebody to bribe and then give them the money, and I would have become a lieutenant or whatever. And then so that's something like I always thought, oh yeah, that's a good thing. And then it's a secure job, and you don't have to worry about anything. And and being an officer is powerful enough. And in Lebanon, after you become a major, they usually give you a car and they give you a driver. It's like you're living the dream. It's something really good. And plus there is no war back then. And because Israel was still there, so you were still considered in a state of war, but the army didn't really fight. It was the resistance who was fighting.
Right.
Mainly Hezbollah, like they were fighting the Israelis. So being in the army and being an officer in the army is, or in the police or in the national security force or whatever it is, it's something really good because you're getting a very well-paid wages, like your wages really good. You have a very good lifestyle, and plus you've got power. And and for back when I was young, power is some amazing thing. You've got power. I can call, let's say, and then everybody will be arrested or something like you'll have this idea. So I thought no, looks like I'm not going to do that. So and then I decided to study physics because my mate, he was talking about physics. He's the one who made me like physics, because the way he talks about it and the way he's explains it, it makes it sound really interesting, which it is. And I started liking physics, but I didn't really study it much. So I thought, I better go and study physics. I can go and do it. Why not? So I went and studied physics probably for 6 months. I was like, that's not me. I can't really do that. And then after that, I went and done 2 years of accounting. During that time, my father had the accident. I wasn't mature enough to study and finish my degree, although this is what I really liked. I liked numbers, and I liked, doing the balance sheets and doing all of these things but yes, I didn't finish my degree. And then I studied law for 6 or 7 months. And then after that, my father passed away, and I decided that's it. I'm going to leave Lebanon. And the reason I went to London is after my father passed away, in about 6 or 7 months or maybe a year, my grandmother, his mum, has passed away. And during her funeral, he's not my uncle, he's my auntie's husband. He was a cleric. And he knew lots of people. Usually it's like being a priest, you'll know other priests all around the world, and he knew lots of clerics all around the Arab world and the Muslim world. And one of these clerics, he had sons in London. The cleric has passed away, but his son was running the actual foundation. It's called Al-Khou'i Foundation in London. He was in Beirut when my grandmother passed away, and he came to pay respect to my uncle, or we call him Uncle, who's my auntie's uncle. And then my uncle called me. He said, come here. So he introduced him to me, and he said, I would like you to take this guy with you to London, or I would like you to do something and take him to London so he can work with you at the foundation. And I was like, wow, that's like a dream coming true, because for me, when I was, I think year 10, we started studying English literature at school. Like we studied Arabic literature and English literature. Although I didn't really like the teacher, but I just kind of enjoyed it when not her, when there was other teachers talking about, let's say, how Shakespeare is writing his plays, and he would always say that his plays will be immortal. Everybody will be coming and reading them and playing them again and again and again. Or when William Wordsworth talk about the Cavaliers. So for me, I always imagined that, that I'm walking over the Thames, I'm crossing the Thames River I'm reading these. It's just as a kid, I was 15 years old. So for me, that was, wow. So it kind of, took me back to these memories. That was good. So this guy, this person in London, he sent me an invitation to go over there. So I went there, and then he was trying to sort out my paperwork, and then he had to go to Iraq. That was in 2003, and then he got killed in Iraq. So he couldn't really finish my paperwork. I couldn't get my visas sorted, so I couldn't really work there. So I was in London for about almost 4 years. Out of these 4 years, probably 3 years, I was living as an illegal immigrant.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So you just went there anyway?
Exactly, yeah. So I went there for the first 6 months. I had a visiting visa until he fixed it, and then it didn't work out. So I was working with the foundation, but I don't know, there was some legal deal that they were doing, so I was allowed to work. But after that visa has ended, I had to go back. So I went back to Lebanon and then renewed the visa and came back, hoping that I'll be able to get something sorted. But nothing has happened. And so during the day, I used to work in the foundation, in a magazine, in an Arabic magazine, doing some editing and copying few tapes and, some lectures and all of that. And then at night time, I started working in a Lebanese restaurant, and that's where I met my wife. She came, wanted somebody to teach her Arabic. And I said, yeah, well, I can. I think probably she asked whether I have a sister that can teach her Arabic. I said, well, my sister is in Lebanon, but if you want, I can teach you Arabic. And this is how we met. So yeah, and then another year, and then we decided that probably I don't want to be.
And she was from Tasmania?
Yes, yeah.
And what was she doing in London?
She was teaching. She's a teacher. She's still a teacher. So yeah, we met there, and then. So we decided that I just will come over here, and that's what happened. So it's been now since April 2007, 16 years and a couple of months.
Yeah. And what motivated that move? I mean, that's a pretty big move. Yeah, well, it's one thing from Beirut to London, but London to
Hobart. When I first got here, I thought well, what I'm doing, that was wrong. That was very.
And did you know that much about Hobart before you got here?
I mean, I didn't know probably that even Tassie existed, to be honest. This is how bad I was until I met Jane. I've heard of the Tasmanian devil and the cartoons and that it spins and all of that.
I think that's the one thing everybody knows.
Exactly, yeah. But I didn't know anything about Tassie. And then when I met Jane, and she specifically made it clear that she is Tasmanian, and I was like, why she's that fussed about where she comes from? I don't get it. She's Australian, so what? Anyways, and then so slowly I started knowing more things about Tassie, and then Jane, I don't know what she was saying, something kind of trying to provoke my intelligence. I was like, now she said, so do you know what Australia's capital is then? I said, yes, I know. Yes, I know it's Canberra. I know that. So don't worry about that. I'm not that bad. I told you I've got 2 different birthdays, one official and one and one real. The same thing with my marriage. So what happened is when we were in London, we had a spiritual marriage, so a Muslim marriage. And then when we came down here, what happened is I came first on a visiting visa, because we had the wedding and we had everything, and I had to be here. It was getting too complicated because we've invited all of these people that they were coming specifically for the wedding, and paperwork was taking too long with the Australian embassy in Beirut. So what happened is they they said, why don't you apply and take a visiting visa, like a tourist visa? And this is what I've done. And then I came back, and then we kind of had another wedding, but it was a smaller one. So I've got 2 weddings, 2 marriages, from the same woman. Yeah, so, and it's been 16 and a bit years. And we've been together for almost 18 years.
And do you remember what made you decide to make the commitment to come all the way to the other side of the world?
The thing is mainly, like, when you're living in a place and you don't have stability, and this is what it is. And that's what most immigrants seek for, stability more than anything else. And that's why they leave their own countries and beloved ones and etc., because they don't feel stable enough, they don't feel secure enough. So all of that sense of security and stability kind of makes you, just, even if you don't know what is on the other side, whether it's green or not, you just make that, and then you hope for the better.
What would you say was the most difficult thing for you?
I'm a people person, and I couldn't find people here. There was lots of nice, and plus, when I first moved down here, I don't know why, but I'm not a practicing Muslim. I am a Muslim, but I don't practice, I don't pray, I don't do all of these things. I did fast, though, back in these days. I don't anymore. I didn't drink, I didn't, there's lots of things that, I did not really do, and I didn't want to kind of, give up all of these values to me. I kind of considered them values rather than moving on. And that's something I have to say. There was a lady that I used to go out with in London, and when I first met her, and there's something in Islam. So let's say before you have an intimate relationship with a woman, it's kind of a part-time marriage. So to make things kind of very, very spiritual and very approving by God or by Allah. And it makes you as a person feel better, as a Muslim person, I'm talking, not or not all Muslims, because there's Sunnis and Shias, and so they all have these different things.
Yeah.
And because as me, I was living in a society that valued these things, and they were very important for them. And when I came to London, it was something like, I better stay and blah, blah, blah. And then that lady said to me, you're in London, live as if you are in London. You're not in Beirut. So I'm not saying leave everything behind, but you need to adapt and you need to move on. And again, it's all about the perspective and the way of dealing with things, and the way of understanding things, and the way of researching and finding yourself again. And yes, so that was a big struggle for me when I first came here. I didn't eat meat if it's not halal meat. So all of these things that slowly I managed to kind of, move on. I still respect all religions, and I still, although, I was telling you, my father, he was a very secular person. He didn't really, he didn't pray. Probably he did, but he didn't pray. He didn't practice religion.
Yeah.
My mum on the other side is the opposite. So that was a struggle to me, because every time I want to go out with my mates, they want to have a drink. And for me, I really want to go and stand with you if I'm not drinking and you drinking. And
yep.
So things like that. Plus, I like, let's say, playing soccer, and I couldn't really find anywhere where you can just go and kick the ball casually with your mates. You have to join a team, and you have to train, and you have to do join the league and all of these things. So you're talking a different city, not many Muslims away from my culture. In London, honestly, there's Edgware Road, but you don't need to speak English in Edgware Road.
Yeah.
It's a road, it's a street. Even the signs on the shops, they're in Arabic. So realistically, you are living in London, but you're not really separated from your community. So if you feel like something you want to eat, you can go and try and eat it.
Because sort of every kind of community you could imagine is in London.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah. That's something which I didn't really find here. I knew that Melbourne and Sydney are different.
And how did you eventually adapt to, how do you get over these barriers and overcome these challenges, I suppose?
You have to kind of I mean, of course, it doesn't really come in one day or one.
Yeah.
It's like a screw, it takes a long time to go all the way through. You start asking yourself questions, and these questions, will be about you, will be about the community, will be about life, will be about what do I want, and all of these, you start going through these things again and again and again, and then you realize at the end, it's you don't really give up, but it's like, okay, you think to yourself, because it's mainly to do with me being stubborn than anything else. The actual society or the actual, or whatever is happening it's not in your hands. You can't really change it. It's going to happen. And if it's happening, okay, maybe you do have some influence. Probably you've got some influence on yourself. So if something is annoying you, or something is not really what you want to do, okay, you change it if you can. But if you can't, just move on and live with it. And this is what happened. You don't really give up or surrender, but at the end of the day, you want to enjoy what you're doing. And if you keep being stubborn and you don't want to, move on and enjoy it, and especially when you start thinking about things like after being outside Lebanon, or outside the whole world, pretty much being here, you just have lots of time to think about these things, especially when you're not fed all of these things, because if you are, let's say, in the Middle East, you'll be listening to the same sort of news, or same sort of, which here I didn't listen to news. I still don't listen to news now, and I spend lots of time with myself. I kind of course I spend lots of time with my family, and that's one of the things that, made me make, not really, I didn't really decide, or I didn't really make the decision. Things came along by themselves, and I was happy with it, and, and I'm enjoying it, and that's why. So you kind of adapt. It's more like what Darwin says, you have to adapt.
Yeah. What was your first job in Tasmania?
It was at a restaurant at Blue Skies as a waiter.
And how did you get? Was it through an informal process or formal?
It was formal, actually.
Okay.
What happened is I was lucky enough. And that's all. I give that credit to my mother-in-law. Actually, I've worked in restaurants in London. When I came here, I was totally refusing the idea of working in restaurants, but I was really struggling, to get a job, especially in Hobart. You're not in a big city. So what happened is here, my mother-in-law, she has found in the newspaper that they're doing a free course at TAFE. She told me about it, so I went and applied. And the person who was when I was applying, there's a funny thing, sorry. I went there wearing a suit and being formal and etc. You're applying for a job, and usually if you apply for a job, you need to sell yourself, so you have to. So I went there, and the lady that I'm still good friends with her, actually. So I mean, when I see her, I said, look, I'm here applying for such and such, and my name is Ali, and she looked at me, and it's looks like a bank manager wearing a suit coming in. But she didn't say that. But later on, you would gather why she looked at me like that. So I went, and they saw me, these two guys, that they were interviewing me, and I told them, look, this is what I've got, skill and such and such and such. And they said, so why are you here to do the course? I said, so I can get a job. And so I've done that course. There was these people who have businesses down on the waterfront. They were coming to see these students that they've done the courses. I think there was about 10 or 12 of us. So I met Jeff Copping there, and I didn't really think too much about it. I thought he's a businessman or a guy who runs a restaurant. So, and then I had my training at the Aztec Grill. So I went and done a couple of months. I think I worked with them. And then I kept working with them every now and then. And then they wanted somebody down at Blue Skies, and my wife said, why don't you apply for it? I was like, do I really? And so I ended up applying for that job, and Jeff was there, and he remembered me. And when he remembered me, I thought, you know what, this guy is good to be able to remember somebody that he has seen 4 months ago in between 10 other people or 12 other students. So I give him the credit of he does care, or he's So I applied for it, and then the manager there, she said, come over for a trial. So I went there for a couple of hours trial, and then I started working there, and then slowly I became the like supervisor there, and then when the managers left, I was sharing position in charge with another guy, the front of house side. Yes. And while I was there, another person bought the business, and me and him didn't really get along. So I thought I better just, I've got a family, I've got responsibility and commitments. I need to look after my kids and my family. So I was asking about other jobs, and one of the girls that used to work with us, she told me that they wanted somebody up at Government House. So I've applied for the job up there, and I've been working there now 12 years. Almost, this is my 12th year. I work at Rest Point as well. So, and down at Rest Point, I started at P1 in a restaurant, and now I work in the housekeeping department, but I like down, it's called the linen room, which is the storeroom of housekeeping. So we order all the linen, we order all the, everything to do with beds and shampoo and everything that goes into the rooms.
In the meantime, since you've been here, you've had a couple of kids?
Yes.
Right? Yeah. How many kids have you got?
2. So Samia is my daughter, and Alexander is my son. So Samia Alice and Alexander Muhammad.
Okay. And how old?
After my father.
Okay. How old are they now?
Samia is 16, and Alexander, he's turning 14 in a few months. Yeah, and they're good kids. They like music, they like sports. Samia plays badminton, and Alex as well. He does play a bit of badminton. He does gymnastic. Samia plays the harp, and Alex plays the violin, and yeah. So. And
have you been able to teach them any Arabic, for example?
No, sadly. I tell you what. When I first got here, I was telling you how I was really strict about, these are the things, I'm going to do it that way. And I was talking to my daughter. I always spoke to her in Arabic. Until she was 2, she was always speaking Arabic. Like, she was really good as like understanding what I'm saying and listening to me. Yes, and then you just, when Alex was born, you just get too busy and too tired and all of these things.
Is there anything that you maybe miss from Lebanon?
I miss the actual way of living, to be honest. It's very relaxed. People here, they're more like machines. So they just like wake up, go to work, come back, go home, sit down, blah, 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 do this, have a drink, prepare dinner. It's like, ABC. It's like...
So very sort of scheduled.
Yes. Yeah. You don't have time to wait, sit, think and relax. You don't... There's that doesn't really exist much in this society. And that's really sad. Because we can appreciate time a bit more. We can I remember I'm worse. I'm the worst probably having 2 jobs sometimes, get too busy. We don't really give ourselves some time to just to enjoy the moment more than... In the Middle East, they are really good in wasting time, that's why the way of living is really relaxed, is easy. It's like, okay, you're meeting somebody and then it's like it didn't happen, or it happened a bit later. They don't really get too cross with each other. Oh, mate, I'm waiting for you. You didn't turn up. Just take it easy.